The sun hung low over the Kansas horizon, turning the sky into a canvas of amber and crimson, as Sarah O'Malley wiped the sweat from her brow, staring at the telegram that had just arrived, the one that would force her to make a choice no mother should ever have to make. Her trembling fingers traced over the words offering work at the saloon in El Dorado, the only opportunity that promised enough money to save her small family from certain starvation after her husband's death left them with nothing but mounting debts. El Dorado, Kansas, 1878. A town built on cattle drives and promises, where opportunity and desperation walked hand in hand. Sarah stood in the doorway of their small farmhouse, watching her two children, Emma, age 8, and Jack, just 5, playing in the dirt yard, blissfully unaware that their world was about to change. The drought had claimed their crops, illness had claimed their father, and now poverty threatened to claim what little they had left. "Mama, look what I made," Emma called, holding up a small figure crafted from twigs and string. Her copper hair, so like her father's, glinted in the fading sunlight. Sarah's throat tightened. "It's beautiful, darling." She knelt down, gathering both children into her arms, inhaling their scent, soap and sunshine and innocence. How could she leave them, but how could she watch them waste away? That night, after tucking the children into bed, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, the oil lamp casting shadows across the worn wooden surface. She reread the letter from her late husband's sister in Wichita, the woman who had offered to care for the children while Sarah worked. Martha was kind but stern, with 3 children of her own. She would feed them, clothe them, see they attended school. It would be temporary, Sarah told herself, just until she saved enough to bring them to El Dorado. 3 days later, Sarah stood on the platform of the Wichita train station, her heart shattering as the whistle blew. Emma clung to her skirts, while Jack, too young to fully understand, played with a wooden horse Sarah had purchased with their precious last coins. "I don't want to stay with Aunt Martha," Emma whispered, her blue eyes swimming with tears. "Why can't we come with you?" Sarah knelt, cupping her daughter's face. "The saloon is no place for children, my love. And you'll have your cousins to play with, and Aunt Martha makes the best apple pies in Kansas. When will you come back for us?" "As soon as I can, I promise." Sarah's voice cracked. "I'll write every week, and before you know it, we'll have a proper home again." The conductor called the final boarding, and Sarah felt as though her legs had turned to stone. Martha stepped forward, her face sympathetic but practical. "They'll be fine, Sarah. Children are resilient," Sarah nodded, unable to speak. She hugged Jack, who giggled, not understanding this was goodbye. Then she embraced Emma, who stood rigid with betrayal. "I love you more than anything in this world," Sarah whispered. "Remember that." The journey to El Dorado seemed endless, the rhythmic clacking of the train wheels a mocking counterpoint to the sobs she muffled behind her handkerchief. By the time the train pulled into the station, Sarah had composed herself. She couldn't arrive looking like a grief-stricken mother. She needed to appear capable, reliable. The kind of woman who could be trusted to serve drinks and smile at customers without complications. El Dorado sprawled before her, larger than she had imagined. Cattle pens lined the outskirts, the air thick with dust and the smell of livestock. Main Street bustled with activity, cowboys fresh off the trail, merchants and townspeople going about their business under the late afternoon sun. The Lucky Spur Saloon stood in the heart of it all, its painted facade and swinging doors promising refuge from the harsh realities of frontier life. Thomas Miller, the saloon owner, was a portly man with shrewd eyes who looked Sarah up and down with businesslike assessment. "You're older than I expected," he said bluntly, "but respectable looking, that's good. Some of the men prefer a woman with a bit of maturity, less giggling, more conversation." Sarah bristled but kept her expression neutral. She was 30, not ancient, though the hardships of the past few years had etched fine lines around her eyes. "I can serve drinks, keep records, and handle myself with dignity, Mr. Miller. What I cannot do is anything that would compromise my reputation." Miller's bushy eyebrows rose. "I run a respectable establishment, Mrs. O'Malley. My girls serve drinks, perhaps dance with the gentlemen and make them feel welcome. What happens after hours is not my concern, but it doesn't happen under my roof. Sarah nodded, relief washing over her. She couldn't afford moral qualms, but there were lines she wouldn't cross not for any amount of money. You'll stay in the room upstairs. It's small but private. Meals are included and you'll get 20% of your drink sales. Work starts at noon and goes until midnight. Sundays off. He slid a key across the counter. One more thing, you're a widow with no children as far as anyone here is concerned. Men don't want to drink with a woman pining for her babies. The room was indeed small, a narrow bed, a washstand, and a hook on the wall for her few dresses. But it had a window overlooking the street and, most importantly, a door that locked. Sarah unpacked her meager belongings, placing the small photograph of her children on the nightstand. She changed into her best-dressed navy blue with a modest neckline and pinned her dark hair into a simple but flattering style. Looking in the small mirror, she practiced her smile. It didn't reach her eyes. Life at the Lucky Spur quickly fell into a rhythm. Sarah learned to navigate the crowded saloon floor, balancing trays of whiskey glasses while deflecting wandering hands with firm politeness. The other girls, most younger, some prettier, all seemingly unburdened by absent children, treated her with casual acceptance. They called her the widow, sometimes with sympathy, sometimes with a touch of mockery for her reserved manner. Each night, after counting her meager tips, Sarah would write in her journal letters to her children that she would eventually mail when she had something positive to report, when she could include a few dollars or a small gift. The words were always the same: I miss you, I love you. Soon we'll be together. 6 weeks into her time at the Lucky Spur, a new face appeared at the bar. He stood out immediately, not because he was particularly handsome, though he was fine-looking enough with his broad shoulders and strong jawline, but because of his quiet demeanor. While other cowboys whooped and hollered, demanding service and attention, this man simply sat, nursing a single whiskey, observing the room with alert blue eyes beneath the brim of his worn hat. "That's Beckett, Xavier," whispered Daisy, the youngest barmaid, as she and Sarah collected glasses. "They say he's the best horse trainer in 3 counties. Works at the Thompson Ranch outside town." Sarah glanced at the man again. "He's not much of a drinker. No, he comes in to play cards mostly, doesn't talk much, but when he does, people listen." Daisy giggled. "And he's never seen upstairs with any of the girls, though plenty have tried." Sarah moved to collect his empty glass. "Another whiskey, sir?" Beckett Xavier looked up, his gaze direct but not intrusive. "No, madam, thank you, just settling my bill." His voice was deep, with the faintest hint of a southern drawl. As he placed coins on the counter, Sarah noticed his hands strong and calloused but clean, the nails trimmed. Working hands, but careful ones. "You're new here," he observed, not a question but not presumptuous either. 6 weeks, Sarah replied, keeping her professional smile in place. He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "Good evening, then." As he stood to leave, his considerable height became apparent. He nodded respectfully to her before placing his hat on his head and walking out into the night. "Cold fish," muttered Daisy disappointedly. But Sarah found herself oddly intrigued by the man's restraint in a place designed for its absence. Beckett Xavier became a regular presence at the Lucky Spur, appearing 2 or 3 times a week, always alone, always courteous. Sometimes he played poker, his face unreadable as he collected modest winnings. Other times he simply sat at the bar, occasionally engaging in quiet conversation with whoever sat nearby. He tipped fairly but not extravagantly, and while he always nodded to Sarah when she served him, he never engaged in the flirtatious banter that was the lifeblood of the saloon. One evening, as Sarah was finishing her shift, a commotion broke out at the poker table. A burly cattleman, deep in his cups and deeper in losses, accused another player of cheating. Within seconds, the situation escalated. Cards flew, chairs toppled, and a knife appeared in the cattleman's meaty fist. Women screamed and scrambled away as the 2 men grappled. Miller shouted for his bouncer, but the man was outside dealing with another disturbance. The knife flashed dangerously close to the other player's throat. Then Beckett was there, moving with surprising speed for such a large man. One moment he was at the bar, the next he was behind the cattleman, gripping the man's wrist in a hold that made him howl and drop the blade. "That's enough," Beckett said, his voice quiet but carrying a steel edge that silenced the room. "You've had too much to drink, Harrison. Time to go home." The cattleman struggled briefly, then slumped in defeat. "Wasn't cheating," muttered the other player, rubbing his neck where the knife had pressed. "Doesn't matter now," said Beckett. "Game's over." He steered Harrison toward the door, nodding to the bouncer who had finally appeared. Only then did Sarah notice the blood staining Beckett's sleeve. The cattleman's knife had caught him in the struggle. "You're hurt," she said, approaching him after the cattleman had been ejected. Beckett glanced at his arm. "It's nothing. It needs cleaning, at least. We have supplies upstairs." Something flickered in his eyes, caution, perhaps. "I don't want to impose. It's not an imposition. It's gratitude. You prevented a murder in our establishment which would have been very bad for business." Sarah tried for lightness, though her heart was still racing from the violence. A slight smile tugged at his lips. "Well, when you put it that way." In her small room, Sarah felt suddenly self-conscious as she gestured for him to sit on the single chair. She was acutely aware of the photograph of her children on the nightstand and quickly moved to place it in the drawer. Beckett noticed but said nothing as he removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeve. The cut was long but not deep, running from his forearm to just below his elbow. Sarah worked silently, cleaning the wound with water and whiskey, her touch clinical but gentle. Up close, she could smell the scents of leather, horses, and clean sweat that clung to him. "You've done this before," he observed as she began to wrap a clean bandage around his arm. "My husband was a farmer. Accidents happen on farms." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she felt a flush of panic. She wasn't supposed to talk about her past, but Beckett just nodded. "My father farmed in Georgia before the war. Hardest work there is. What brought you west?" She asked, grateful for his easy acceptance of her slip. "The war, then opportunity. I have a way with horses, and they're in demand out here." He flexed his arm as she finished the bandage. "Thank you, Mrs. O'Malley, Sarah O'Malley, Mrs. O'Malley." He stood, towering in the small room, but somehow not threateningly. "I appreciate the care." As he put his jacket back on, his gaze caught on her hands, specifically on the slight calluses that no amount of saloon work would create, but that years of farm work would. "If you ever need anything," he said simply, "the Thompson Ranch is just north of town." With that, he nodded and left, his footsteps receding down the hallway. Sarah sat on her bed, staring at the closed door. It had been so long since anyone had offered her help without expecting something in return that she wasn't quite sure what to make of it. With a sigh, she retrieved the photograph from the drawer and traced her children's faces before going to bed. The following weeks brought an unexpected development. Beckett Xavier began appearing at the Lucky Spur more frequently, though his habits remained the same: moderate drinking, occasional cards, quiet observation. What changed was his attention toward Sarah. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that would cause gossip, but she often caught his gaze following her across the room, and he made a point of sitting at her section of the bar when possible. One evening, as she served him his usual whiskey, he said, "I hear the saloon's busiest on Friday and Saturday nights." Sarah nodded. "Yes, the cattle buyers come through and the ranch hands get their pay, meaning Sunday nights are quiet. We're closed Sundays, I know." He took a sip of his drink. "I was wondering if you might allow me to take you to dinner tomorrow evening at the hotel restaurant." Sarah was so surprised she nearly dropped the glass she was wiping. No one in El Dorado had asked to court her properly. There had been propositions, certainly, but not respectful invitations to public establishments. That's very kind, Mr. Xavier, but I don't think it's just dinner," he said quietly. "Nothing more. You've been working hard. Thought you might appreciate a meal you don't have to serve or prepare yourself." Put that way, it was hard to refuse, and something about his steady gaze made her believe his intentions were honorable. "All right," she said finally. "Thank you." The hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in El Dorado, with actual tablecloths and a menu that extended beyond steak and beans. Sarah wore her Sunday dress dark green with a touch of lace at the collar and felt both nervous and foolish as she waited for Beckett on the hotel porch. She hadn't been courted since before her marriage 12 years ago, and even then, courtship in her small Ohio town had been a simple affair of church socials and chaperoned walks. Beckett arrived precisely on time, dressed in clean trousers and a pressed shirt, his usually tousled brown hair neatly combed. He offered his arm with old-fashioned courtesy. "You look lovely, Mrs. O'Malley." "Thank you, and please call me Sarah." Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. Beckett was not a man of many words, but the ones he chose were thoughtful, and he proved to be an excellent listener. He told her about his work at the Thompson Ranch, his plans to someday have a place of his own. Sarah was careful to keep her own stories vague, focusing on her childhood in Ohio rather than her more recent past. As they lingered over apple pie, Beckett said, "You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I'm curious. What brought a respectable widow to work at the Lucky Spur?" The question, though gently asked, pierced through Sarah's careful facade. She looked down at her plate, considering how much to reveal. "Necessity," she finally said. "My husband died last winter, pneumonia. The farm—" She swallowed. "The farm went to the bank." Beckett nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I'm sorry." "Life is hard everywhere," Sarah said, repeating what had become her mantra. "El Dorado offered work when I needed it. It's still a brave thing, starting over in a new place." His sincere admiration touched something in Sarah that had been dormant for too long. For months, she had viewed herself as a failure, a mother who had abandoned her children, a widow who couldn't maintain her husband's farm, a woman forced to work in a place good women avoided. Beckett's respect felt like water on parched soil. As he walked her back to the saloon, they moved in comfortable silence. At the side door that led to the upstairs rooms, he paused. "I enjoyed this evening, Sarah. I hope we might do it again." "I'd like that," she replied, surprised to find she truly meant it. He tipped his hat and waited until she was safely inside before turning to go. Sarah climbed the stairs to her room, a strange warmth spreading through her chest, only to have it immediately doused by guilt when she saw the photograph of Emma and Jack. What right did she have to enjoy an evening with a kind man when her children were miles away, perhaps crying for her at that very moment? She sat down heavily on the bed, the pleasant glow of the evening fading as reality reasserted itself. She was here for one purpose: to earn enough money to reunite with her children. Nothing else mattered, yet as she drifted off to sleep, her last thoughts were of Beckett's gentle smile and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed. Their Sunday dinners became a quiet tradition over the next few weeks. Each time, Sarah told herself it would be the last, that she shouldn't encourage Beckett's attention when she had no future to offer him. Yet each time he asked, she found herself saying yes, drawn to his steadiness and the respite he provided from the noisy, demanding atmosphere of the saloon. During their fourth dinner, Beckett asked, "Have you always worked in saloons?" Sarah nearly choked on her water. "No," she said firmly. "Before my husband died, I was a farmer's wife. I kept house, tended the garden, helped with the harvest. And after, before El Dorado," Sarah hesitated. "I took in sewing, but it wasn't enough." Beckett nodded, seemingly satisfied with her abbreviated truth. "You have skilled hands. I noticed when you bandaged my arm." The conversation shifted to safer topics, but as they walked back under the star-filled Kansas sky, Beckett said, "I'm heading to Wichita next week. Thompson's sending me to look at some horses. I'll be gone about 10 days. Sarah's heart jumped at the mention of Wichita. "Wichita," she repeated, trying to sound casual. "I hear it's growing fast." "Booming," he agreed. "Is there anything you need from there? I'd be happy to bring something back." An idea formed in Sarah's mind, dangerous perhaps, but tempting. "Actually, if you wouldn't mind, I have a letter I'd like delivered. To my late husband's sister. She's holding some family heirlooms for me." It wasn't entirely a lie. Martha did have a few of Sarah's mother's pieces of brooch, a silver hairbrush, items too valuable to bring to the saloon but not valuable enough to sell for meaningful money. "Of course," Beckett said easily. "Write down the address and I'll make sure it gets to her." That night, Sarah wrote 2 letters. The first, addressed to Martha, explained that the bearer was a trusted friend who would be bringing a package back to El Dorado. The second, for her children, contained all the love and longing she had bottled up for months, along with a promise that she was working hard to bring them home soon. She included every penny she had saved, not enough yet, but a start, and sealed both letters with trembling hands. The next day, she gave the letters to Beckett along with Martha's address. "Thank you," she said, unable to fully express what this small kindness meant to her. "It's important. I'll guard it with my life," he promised, tucking the letters safely inside his jacket. The 10 days of Beckett's absence stretched interminably. Sarah found herself watching the saloon doors each night, irrationally hoping he would appear despite knowing he was 100 miles away. When he wasn't at his usual place at the bar, the room seemed dimmer somehow, less safe. She threw herself into her work, taking extra shifts, staying later to earn more tips. By the time Beckett was due to return, she had saved another $8 toward bringing her children to El Dorado. It was a Tuesday evening when he finally reappeared, his tall frame filling the saloon doorway as he scanned the room. When his eyes found Sarah, his face brightened with a smile that made her pulse quicken. He made his way to the bar, waiting patiently as she served other customers before approaching. "Welcome back," she said, pouring his usual whiskey before he could ask. "Thank you," he sipped appreciatively. "I have something for you. Can you meet me after your shift?" Sarah nodded, curiosity and hope warring in her chest. For the rest of the evening, she moved through her duties in a fog of anticipation. What news did he bring from Wichita? Had he seen her children? Did they look well? Did they hate her for leaving them? Finally, at midnight, as the last drunken cowboys stumbled out and Daisy began sweeping the floor, Sarah untied her apron and slipped outside. Beckett waited in the shadows beside the building, a package tucked under his arm. "Let's walk," he suggested. "The night's pleasant." They strolled toward the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open prairie, and the star-filled sky spread overhead like a canopy. The air was cool but not cold, fragrant with sage and the distant scent of cattle. "Your sister-in-law seems like a formidable woman," Beckett said as they walked. Sarah smiled despite her nervousness. "Martha believes in propriety above all else. She also believes in family." He stopped and handed her the package. "She asked me to tell you that the treasures are well cared for, but missing their rightful owner." Sarah's hands shook as she unwrapped the brown paper. Inside was a small box containing her mother's silver hairbrush and a brooch, the heirlooms she had mentioned. But beneath them lay treasures far more precious. A small wooden horse, clearly loved and played with, its paint worn in places, a carefully pressed wildflower, and 2 letters in childish handwriting. Tears blurred Sarah's vision as she touched the items her children had sent. "Did you see them?" She whispered. There was a long pause. "Yes," Beckett finally said. "I saw them." Sarah's head snapped up, fear and anger suddenly replacing gratitude. "You know," Beckett met her gaze steadily, "your sister-in-law was suspicious at first. Wouldn't give me anything until I explained how I knew you. Even then, she only let me see the children briefly. They're beautiful, Sarah. They look like you." Shame and relief flooded through Sarah in equal measure. Her carefully constructed facade had crumbled, exposing the truth she had been hiding from everyone in El Dorado. "Are you going to tell Miller?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Beckett frowned. "Why would I do that?" "Because he forbade me from mentioning my children. He thinks men don't want to drink with a mother pining for her babies." The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. "What men want in a saloon isn't your concern," Beckett said firmly. "Your children are your concern, and they're well, Sarah. They miss you terribly, but they're healthy and safe." The relief was so overwhelming that Sarah's knees buckled. Beckett caught her arm, steadying her, then guided her to sit on a fallen log at the roadside. She clutched the small treasures from her children, unable to stem the tears that flowed freely now. "I had no choice," she said through her sobs. "The farm was gone, we had no food, no prospects. Martha couldn't take all 3 of us, and the only work for a woman alone." "You don't need to explain yourself to me," Beckett said gently. "Don't I? You must think I'm a terrible mother." I think you're the bravest person I've ever met." His voice was quiet but firm. "You sacrificed your happiness for theirs. There's no greater love than that." Sarah looked up at him through tear-stained lashes, searching his face for judgment and finding none. "I'm saving every penny," she said. "As soon as I have enough for a small place, I'm bringing them here." Beckett nodded. "How much more do you need?" The question, practical and direct, steadied her. "Another $100 at least, for a room or small house and enough to get established before finding different work." "The ranch needs help," Beckett said. "Not with the horses, that's my domain, but the cook's getting old and Mrs. Thompson has been talking about finding someone to help with meals and cleaning." Hope flared in Sarah's chest. "Are you offering me a job?" "It pays less than the saloon in pure dollars," he admitted. "But it includes a cabin small but clean and private, and it's respectable work, the kind that wouldn't raise eyebrows if you had children with you." Sarah stared at him, unable to fully process what he was offering. "Why would you do this?" Beckett looked away, his profile strong against the night sky. "Because no one helped my mother when she needed it," he said simply. "After my father died in the war, she took whatever work she could find. It broke her eventually." The pain in his voice told Sarah this was not a story he shared often. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago," he turned back to her. "The job is yours if you want it. No obligations to me or anyone else, just honest work for fair pay." Sarah closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected gift of hope. "I need to think," she said. "It's so sudden. Of course, the offer stands whenever you're ready." He helped her gather the precious items back into the box. "I should get you back before anyone starts to wonder." As they walked back toward town, Sarah's mind raced. The prospect of leaving the saloon, of having a respectable job and a place of her own, was intoxicating. But she had learned the hard way that opportunities often came with hidden costs. "Beckett," she said as they neared the lucky spur, "why are you really doing this?" He stopped, turning to face her fully in the moonlight. "Do you want the completely honest answer?" She nodded, bracing herself. "Because from the first moment I saw you in that saloon, I knew you didn't belong there. There was a dignity about you, a purpose. And the more I've come to know you, the more I've come to—" He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "To admire you," he finished. "You deserve better than serving whiskey to men who don't respect you." "And that's all," Sarah pressed, sensing there was more. Beckett's eyes, so steady and clear, met hers. "No," he admitted quietly, "that's not all, but the rest can wait until you're settled, until your children are with you." "I'm a patient man, Sarah O'Malley." The implications of his words hung in the air between them, not a declaration, not quite, but a promise of possibilities that made Sarah's heart beat faster. "I'll think about the job," she said. "Truly," he nodded, accepting her caution. "Good night, then." As Sarah climbed the stairs to her room, clutching the package from her children, she felt something she hadn't experienced in more than a year. Hope. Not just the desperate hope of survival, but the warm, expanding hope of a future that might hold more than mere existence. She sat on her bed and opened the letters from Emma and Jack. Emma's was 3 pages of careful script, detailing life with Aunt Martha, her progress in school, and how she missed Sarah more than all the stars in the sky. Jack's was shorter, with wobbly letters and a drawing of what appeared to be their family stick figures labeled Mama, Jack, and Emma, standing beside a house with a chimney. At the bottom, in Emma's neater hand, was written, "Jack says to tell you he's being brave, but he needs you to come home soon." Sarah pressed the letters to her heart, a resolve forming within her. 2 weeks later, she gave Miller her notice. "Going to work at the Thompson Ranch," she told him when he demanded an explanation. "As a cook's helper." Miller's bushy eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. "That cowboy's been filling your head with nonsense, hasn't he? You'll make half what you make here." "I'll have a roof over my head that doesn't come with expectations," Sarah countered. "And respect," Miller snorted. "Respect doesn't feed a woman alone." "I'm not alone," Sarah said, the words feeling like freedom. "I have 2 children in Wichita. I'm bringing them here as soon as I'm settled." The saloon owner's face registered shock, then understanding. "So that's why you've been squirreling away every penny. Well, I can't say I'm not disappointed to lose you, but I understand doing what you must for family." His unexpected compassion caught Sarah off guard. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Miller. I wouldn't have survived without it." He waved away her gratitude. "You're a hard worker. The Thompson place is lucky to have you." The Thompson Ranch lay 5 miles north of El Dorado, a sprawling operation with a main house, bunkhouse, barns, and several smaller cabins scattered across the property. The cabin assigned to Sarah was indeed small, just one room with a curtain dividing the sleeping area from the living space, but it was clean and sound, with a small porch overlooking a creek. Mrs. Thompson, a practical woman in her 50s, showed Sarah around the kitchen on her first day. "Breakfast at 5 for the hands, dinner at noon, supper at 7. In between, you'll help with the laundry, mending, and general cleaning. Sundays are for church and rest." She eyed Sarah appraisingly. "Beckett speaks highly of you, says you're not afraid of hard work." "No, madam, I'm not." "Good, and these children of yours, when will they be arriving?" Sarah hesitated. "As soon as I can send for them. I need to save a bit more for the train fare." Mrs. Thompson nodded. "Children belong with their mothers. We can arrange for them to attend the school on the property with the foreman's children." She smiled slightly. "My husband thinks I don't know. He suggested hiring you because Beckett has taken a shine to you. Men think they're so mysterious." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "Mr. Xavier has been very kind, but no need to explain, girl. Beckett Xavier is the finest man on this ranch. If he's interested, that's his business and yours." She patted Sarah's arm. "Now let me show you how we organize the pantry." Life at the Thompson Ranch settled into a rhythm far different from the saloon. The work was hard. Cooking for 20 hungry ranch hands was no small feat, but it was honest labor, conducted in daylight among people who treated Sarah with respect. She rose before dawn, worked until dusk, and fell into bed exhausted but satisfied. Beckett maintained a careful distance during her first weeks on the ranch. He took his meals with the other hands, nodding politely to Sarah but never seeking her out. She understood he was giving her space to establish herself independently, to avoid any gossip that might damage her new beginning. It was nearly a month before he appeared at her cabin one Sunday afternoon, hat in hand, a bouquet of wildflowers extended awkwardly toward her. "I thought you might like to ride out to see the north pasture," he said. "It's beautiful this time of year." Sarah accepted the flowers with a smile. "Let me put these in water first." They rode double on his horse, Sarah seated in front of Beckett, his arms around her to hold the reins. The solid warmth of him against her back was both comforting and unsettling, stirring feelings she had thought long buried. The north pasture was indeed beautiful, a rolling expanse of grass dotted with wildflowers and bordered by a line of cottonwoods along a creek. They dismounted in the shade of the largest tree, and Beckett spread a blanket he had brought tied behind the saddle. "Mrs. Thompson packed this," he said, producing a basket of cold chicken, biscuits, and apple tarts. "She's quite the matchmaker, it seems." Sarah laughed, the sound surprising her with its ease. "She's made her opinions known to me as well." They ate in comfortable conversation, sharing stories of their childhood's. Beckett's in Georgia before the war, Sarah's in Ohio. When the meal was finished, they sat side by side against the trunk of the cottonwood, watching clouds drift across the vast Kansas sky. "I've saved almost enough," Sarah said after a comfortable silence. "For the train fare to bring Emma and Jack here," Beckett nodded. "That's good news." "I wrote to them about the cabin, about the school. Emma's excited. Jack's too young to really understand, but he drew a picture of a horse." She smiled. "I think that's your influence. I told them about the kind cowboy who helped us." "And what did they say to that?" "Emma asked if you were handsome like the cowboys in the stories. I told her you were more handsome, but much less dramatic." Beckett laughed, the sound rich and warm. "High praise indeed." He hesitated, then took her hand gently in his. "Sarah, I need to ask you something important." She tensed slightly, though she didn't withdraw her hand. "All right. When your children come, and they will come soon, I'll make sure of it. What are your plans? Will you stay on at the ranch if Mrs. Thompson will have me? It's good work, and the cabin is perfect for us." Beckett nodded, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "And what about us? The directness of his question made Sarah's breath catch. Is there an us, Beckett? I think there could be. His blue eyes were steady on hers. I care for you, Sarah. More than I expected to, more than is probably wise for a man who spent most of his life alone. But I won't press you for anything more than friendship until you're ready, until your children are settled and you're certain of what you want. The honesty of his declaration moved her deeply. I care for you too, she admitted. But my children have to come first. They've lost so much already, their father, their home, their security. I can't ask them to accept a new man in their lives until I'm sure. That I'm worthy of them, Beckett finished, and of you, I understand that. I'm prepared to earn their trust and yours. He leaned forward slowly, giving her ample time to pull away if she wished, and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. The tenderness of the gesture brought unexpected tears to Sarah's eyes. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For understanding. For not demanding more than I can give right now, Beckett smiled. We have time, Sarah, all the time we need. As they rode back to the ranch, the setting sun painting the prairie gold and crimson, Sarah leaned back slightly against Beckett's solid chest, allowing herself to imagine a future she had thought forever lost. A home filled with laughter, children growing strong and happy, and a good man to share the burdens and joys of life. 2 weeks later, Sarah counted her savings one last time, then wrote to Martha with the train fare and a date. The children would arrive in El Dorado on the 15th of September, just 3 weeks away. She worked with renewed energy, preparing the cabin for their arrival, accepting hand-me-down clothes from the foreman's wife for Emma, toys carved by one of the older ranch hands for Jack. Beckett contributed to a small desk for Emma's schoolwork, placed carefully by the window for the best light, a rocking horse for Jack, sanded smooth and painted bright red. When Sarah protested that it was too much, he simply shook his head. Let me do this, he said. Please. The night before the children were due to arrive, Sarah couldn't sleep. She paced the small cabin, checking and rechecking that everything was ready. The 2 small beds were made up with fresh linens, their few toys arranged neatly. She had baked cookies and prepared their favorite stew. But still, anxiety gnawed at her. What if they didn't recognize her? What if they hated her for leaving them? What if they refused to accept this new life? A soft knock at the door startled her from her worries. She opened it to find Beckett standing there, his expression concerned. I saw the light still burning, he said. Thought you might be having trouble sleeping. I can't stop thinking about tomorrow, Sarah admitted, stepping back to let him in. That's understandable. He glanced around the cabin at the careful preparations. They're going to love it, Sarah. And they're going to be so happy to see you. It's been almost 8 months. Jack might not even remember me. He will, Beckett said firmly. A child doesn't forget his mother. He hesitated, then added, I lost my mother when I was 8. Not to death, she sent me to live with my uncle when things got too hard for her. I never saw her again, but I never forgot her face, her voice, the way she smelled like lavender and fresh bread. Sarah's heart ached for the boy he had been. I'm sorry. The point is, Jack will remember. And even if the details are fuzzy, he'll remember the feeling of being loved. That doesn't fade. His words comforted her more than he could know. Thank you for coming to check on me. Actually, Beckett said, looking slightly embarrassed, I had another reason for coming by. I wondered if you'd like me to take the night shift. Sarah frowned, confused. The night shift, looking after the cabin, he clarified. I could sit out on the porch, make sure everything's peaceful so you can rest. You'll need your strength for tomorrow. The offer was so unexpected, so thoughtful, that Sarah felt tears welling in her eyes. Beckett, you don't have to decide right away, he said quickly. I just thought, yes, she interrupted, I'd like that very much. So it was that Sarah finally slept, knowing Beckett Xavier sat guard on her porch, his steady presence keeping the night fears at bay. Just before dawn, she awoke and went to the door. Beckett was still there, wrapped in a blanket against the pre-dawn chill, his eyes alert. You should have come inside, she said. It got cold, he smiled. I was fine. Standing, he stretched his tall frame. Feel better? Much. She hesitated, then asked, Will you come with me to the station to meet them? Surprise and pleasure crossed his face. Are you sure? I thought you might want that moment to be private. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "And they've heard about you in my letters. I think having you there might make it easier somehow." Beckett nodded. "Then of course I'll come." They took the wagon into El Dorado later that morning, the September sun warm on their backs. The train was due at noon, and they arrived at the station with time to spare. Sarah paced the platform, smoothing her best dress repeatedly, while Beckett watched with patient understanding. When the train whistle sounded in the distance, Sarah froze. "They're here," she whispered. Beckett moved to stand beside her, not touching her but close enough that she could feel his steadying presence. "Deep breaths," he advised quietly. The train pulled into the station with a screech of brakes and a cloud of steam. Passengers began to disembark: businessmen, a family with older children, a couple of cowboys. And then there they were, Martha, straight-backed and proper as ever, holding Jack's hand while Emma walked beside them, her copper hair visible even from a distance. For a moment, Sarah couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then Jack looked up, his eyes scanning the platform, and he saw her. "Mama." He shrieked, tearing free of Martha's grip and running full tilt towards Sarah. The sound of his voice broke her paralysis. She knelt, arms outstretched, and caught him as he flung himself at her, his small body colliding with hers with the force of 8 months of separation. She buried her face in his hair, inhaling the scent of him, feeling the solidity of his little body against hers. "Jack, my Jack," she murmured, tears flowing freely now. When she looked up, Emma stood a few feet away, her expression a complicated mixture of joy and wariness. Sarah extended one arm, keeping the other around Jack. "Emma," she said, her voice breaking. For a terrible moment, Emma didn't move. Then, with a small sob, she stepped forward and allowed herself to be drawn into the embrace. "You came back," she whispered. "You really came back." "I promised I would," Sarah said, holding her children as though she would never let them go again. "And I will never leave you again. Never." Eventually, they separated enough for Sarah to stand, though Jack clung to her skirts and Emma kept a tight grip on her hand. Martha approached, her usual stern expression softened slightly. "They've been well behaved," she said by way of greeting. "Emma's at the top of her class and Jack's grown 3 inches since you left him." "Thank you," Sarah said sincerely, "for everything." Martha nodded, then glanced at Beckett, who had remained a respectful distance away during the reunion. "You must be Mr. Xavier." He stepped forward, hat in hand. "Yes, madam, thank you for bringing the children safely." Martha assessed him with a critical eye, then seemed to approve of what she saw. "You're taking good care of our Sarah, I trust." "I'm trying to, madam." Jack tugged at Sarah's skirt, looking up at Beckett with curious eyes. "Are you the cowboy, the one who takes care of horses?" Beckett knelt to Jack's level, his expression serious. "I am. My name's Beckett. Your mama's told me a lot about you." Jack considered this. "Do you have a horse?" "I have several. Would you like to see them sometime?" The boy nodded enthusiastically. Emma, more reserved, studied Beckett carefully before asking, "Did you really help our mama find a new house for us?" "Your mama found it herself," Beckett corrected gently. "I just told her where to look." His answer seemed to satisfy Emma, who offered him a small smile before turning back to Sarah. "Is it far, the new house?" "About 5 miles, Sarah said. "But it's beautiful, Emma. There's a creek nearby and you'll have your own school to attend on the ranch." "A real ranch." "With cowboys and everything?" "Real cowboys," Sarah confirmed, exchanging a warm glance with Beckett. "And horses and cattle and wide open spaces to explore." Martha insisted on seeing the cabin before returning to Wichita, so they all crowded into the wagon for the journey to the Thompson Ranch. Jack sat on Sarah's lap, refusing to be separated even for the short ride, while Emma sat between Sarah and Beckett, stealing curious glances at the cowboy when she thought no one was looking. The children's reaction to the cabin was everything Sarah had hoped for. Jack made a beeline for the rocking horse, while Emma exclaimed over the desk by the window and the small bookshelf Beckett had filled with books borrowed from Mrs. Thompson's library. "It's perfect, Mama," Emma declared, throwing her arms around Sarah's waist. "Much better than Aunt Martha's house." Martha sniffed but didn't contradict her. After inspecting the cabin and pronouncing it suitable if small, she prepared to leave, as she needed to catch the evening train back to Wichita. "You've done well, Sarah," she said as they stood outside the cabin. "Better than I expected, I'll admit." Coming from Martha, this was high praise indeed. Sarah embraced her sister-in-law, surprising both of them with the gesture. "Thank you for caring for them when I couldn't." "They're family," Martha said simply. "We do what must be done for family." After Martha's departure, taken back to town by one of the ranch hands, a sudden quiet fell over the cabin. The children, exhausted from the journey and the excitement, had finally begun to wind down. Jack sat on the floor with a set of wooden blocks while Emma curled up on her bed with one of the books. Beckett, who had helped carry in their few belongings, stood awkwardly by the door. "I should let you all get settled," he said. "I'm sure you have a lot to catch up on." Sarah walked outside with him, closing the door softly behind her. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. "Thank you," she said, "for everything today." "They're wonderful children," Beckett replied. "You should be proud." "I am." Sarah hesitated, then added, "Jack's already half in love with you and your horses." Beckett smiled. "The feeling's mutual, and Emma, she's more cautious. She remembers her father more clearly, and she felt the abandonment more keenly. It will take time." "I understand." "I'm prepared to be patient." Sarah reached out impulsively and took his hand. "I don't deserve your kindness." "That's not true," Beckett said firmly. "You deserve every kindness, Sarah O'Malley, you and your children." He leaned forward and for the first time placed a gentle kiss on her lips, brief, respectful, but filled with promise. "Rest now," he said softly. "Your children need you." Sarah watched him walk away, her heart fuller than it had been in years. Inside the cabin, Emma and Jack waited her past and present reunited. And outside, Beckett Xavier rode toward the bunkhouse, a future she was beginning to believe might actually be possible. The first weeks of reunion were both joyous and challenging. Jack attached himself to Sarah like a shadow, panicking if she moved out of sight even briefly. Emma, while thrilled to be with her mother again, harbored a deep fear that this happiness was temporary, that Sarah might leave again if times grew difficult. Sarah worked hard to reassure them, to rebuild the trust that had been damaged by their separation. She arranged with Mrs. Thompson to have the children accompany her to work, Jack playing nearby as she cooked, Emma helping with simple tasks after school. At night, she held them close, telling stories of their father, of the farm, of the life they had shared, and the new one they were building. Beckett kept a respectful distance during this period of adjustment, understanding that the family needed time to heal. But he found small ways to connect, teaching Jack to care for the ranch's gentlest pony, helping Emma with a school project about local plants and animals, leaving fresh caught fish on Sarah's porch for their supper. Gradually, the children came to accept him as part of their new life. Jack's admiration was uncomplicated. An immediate Beckett was a cowboy who rode horses and could lasso a calf, qualities that made him a hero in the 5-year-old's eyes. Emma's acceptance came more slowly, built through Beckett's patient answers to her endless questions and his evident respect for her mother. One evening in late October, as Sarah sat on the porch mending one of Jack's shirts, Beckett appeared with his guitar, an instrument she had not known he played. "Thought the children might enjoy some music before bed," he explained. Inside the cabin, Jack clapped with delight while Emma looked up from her book with interest. Beckett sat on the floor and began to play, his deep voice joining the melody. Old songs, trail songs, some funny enough to make the children giggle, others sweet enough to make Sarah's heart ache. When Jack fell asleep mid-song, his head drooping against Beckett's arm, the cowboy carefully lifted him and carried him to bed with a tenderness that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. "Will you come again tomorrow?" Emma asked as he prepared to leave. Beckett glanced at Sarah, seeking permission. "If your mama doesn't mind." "I don't mind," Sarah said softly. After that, Beckett became a regular evening visitor, sometimes bringing his guitar, sometimes a game for the children, sometimes just stories of his day with the horses. The four of them settled into a routine that felt increasingly natural: dinner together, then activities until the children's bedtime, followed by quiet conversation between Sarah and Beckett on the porch. It was during one such evening, with the children asleep and the November moon high overhead, that Beckett took Sarah's hand and said, "I've been offered my own spread." Sarah's heart dropped. "You're leaving?" "No," he said quickly. "It's here, the old Peterson place, just 3 miles east. Thompson's buying it for me to start a horse breeding operation as a partner in the main ranch." "Beckett, that's wonderful." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Your own place, just like you wanted," he nodded, a mixture of pride and nervousness in his expression. "It's not much yet, the house needs work and the barns sound but small, but there's good water, good grazing, and room to grow." "When will you move?" "After Christmas. There's a lot to prepare first." He cleared his throat. "Sarah, I've been thinking." She waited, her heart suddenly racing. "The Peterson house has 3 bedrooms," he continued. "And a proper kitchen, not just a cook stove in the corner. There's an apple orchard, small but established, room for a garden." Sarah realized where he was heading. "Beckett, I'm not asking yet," he said quickly. "I know it's too soon. The children are just settling in, you're all finding your footing. But I wanted you to know that when I look at that house, I see space for 4, not 1. When I think of my future there, I see you and Emma and Jack as part of it." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything now, just think about it, about the possibility." He stood, preparing to leave. "I'll keep visiting, if that's all right. Keep getting to know the children and letting them know me, and when you're ready, if you're ever ready, the question will be waiting." He bent to kiss her softly, then walked away into the darkness, leaving Sarah with a heart full of both hope and trepidation. Christmas came to the Thompson ranch in a flurry of activity. The main house was decorated with greenery and ribbons, and Mrs. Thompson organized a celebration for all the ranch employees and their families. Emma helped bake cookies shaped like stars, while Jack crafted decorations from pine cones and scraps of fabric under the patient guidance of the foreman's wife. Sarah watched her children flourish with a profound sense of gratitude. Emma had grown 2 inches and gained weight, the gauntness of poverty giving way to healthy roundness in her cheeks. Jack no longer woke crying in the night, secure in the knowledge that his mother would be there in the morning. They had friends now, the foreman's children, the blacksmith's son, the cook's granddaughter who visited on holidays, and they had Beckett, who had become a steady presence in their lives. He taught Jack to ride the gentlest pony on the ranch, holding the boy securely as they circled the corral. He helped Emma identify the constellations on clear nights, his knowledge of the stars surprising and delighting her. He brought Sarah wildflowers and sweet words, but never pressed for more than she was ready to give. On Christmas Eve, after the ranch celebration, Beckett came to the cabin with presents: a hand-tooled leather belt for Jack with his initials stamped into it, a journal bound in soft calfskin for Emma, and for Sarah, a silver locket containing miniature portraits of her children, painted by an artist in El Dorado from sketches Beckett had made himself. "It's beautiful," she whispered, tears welling as she fastened it around her neck. "How did you manage this?" "I have some talents besides horses," he said with a smile, "and I had help with the painting part." The children presented him with their own gifts: a hand-knitted scarf from Emma, with considerable assistance from Sarah, and a drawing from Jack of Beckett on his horse, surrounded by what appeared to be a herd of multicolored horses with wings. "Flying horses are faster," Jack explained seriously. "Can't argue with that logic," Beckett agreed, equally serious. After the children were in bed, Beckett and Sarah sat before the fire he had built in the small fireplace. The cabin was warm and fragrant with pine boughs and cinnamon, the children's stockings hanging from nails on the mantel. "I have something else for you," Beckett said, reaching into his pocket. "It's not really a Christmas present, more of a possibility." He handed her a small box, and Sarah's breath caught. When she opened it, however, it contained not a ring but a key to the Peterson house, he explained. "I thought maybe tomorrow, after the children open their presents, you might all like to come see it. It's rough yet, but I've been working on it when I can. The roof's sound now, and the chimney draws well." Sarah turned the key over in her palm, feeling its weight, the weight of decision, of future. "We'd like that," she said softly. The Peterson house was indeed rough, the paint peeling, the porch sagging in one corner, the yard overgrown with weeds. But as Beckett led them through the rooms, Sarah could see the potential. High ceilings, large windows that would let in abundant light, a kitchen large enough for a proper table where they could all eat together. "The main bedroom is here," Beckett said, opening a door to a spacious room with a fireplace. "And these two would be for the children. The roof needed work over this one, but it's fixed now. No more leaks." Emma ran to the window in what would be her room, looking out at the view of rolling pasture. "There's a pond," she exclaimed, "and apple trees. The apples are small but sweet," Beckett told her. "Good for pies." Jack was less interested in the house than in the barn, where Beckett had already installed his two best breeding horses. "Will the flying horses live here too?" he asked, petting the nose of a gentle mare. "Just the regular kind, I'm afraid," Beckett said solemnly. "But they're pretty special anyway." As the children explored, Beckett and Sarah stood in what would be the parlor, watching them through the windows. "What do you think?" Beckett asked quietly. "It's a wonderful place," Sarah said honestly. "It will be beautiful when you've finished the repairs." "That wasn't really what I was asking." Sarah turned to face him, this man who had changed her life so completely in the space of a few months. I think the children would love growing up in a place like this. And their mother is still a little scared," Sarah admitted. "Not of you, never of you, but of believing in happiness again, of trusting that good things can last." Beckett nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I can wait, Sarah, as long as it takes." But Sarah found, looking at him in the winter light streaming through the uncurtained windows, that she didn't want to wait anymore. The past months had shown her what kind of man Beckett Xavier was: steady, kind, patient, honest. He had earned her trust 100 times over, not with grand gestures but with consistent care. "What if it doesn't take that long?" she asked. "What if I'm ready now?" Beckett's eyes widened. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that I love you," Sarah said, the words both terrifying and liberating. "I love the way you are with my children, the way you've never rushed us, the way you see the best in all of us. I love your patience and your strength and your gentleness. And I'm saying that if you're still offering a future for all four of us in this house, then my answer is yes." For a moment, Beckett seemed unable to speak. Then he closed the distance between them in 2 long strides and gathered her into his arms. "I love you too," he said against her hair. "You and Emma and Jack, you're the family I never thought I'd have." When he kissed her, Sarah felt a sense of homecoming more profound than any she had ever experienced. This was right, this man, this place, this moment. A giggle from the doorway broke them apart. Emma stood there, her eyes wide, while Jack peeked around her with a confused expression. "Are you kissing?" Jack asked with 5-year-old directness. "Yes," Beckett answered honestly, "because I love your mama very much, and I've asked her if you all might come live here with me as a family." Emma's expression turned serious. "Like you'd be our new pa." Beckett knelt to her level. "I would be honored to be your pa, Emma, but I know you had a father who loved you very much, and I would never try to replace him in your hearts. I would just hope to find my own place there if you'll let me." Emma considered this carefully, then asked, "Would we have to call you pa right away?" "You can call me Beckett for as long as you like," he assured her, "or anything else that feels right to you. And we'd live here, all of us. That's the plan, yes, but only if you and Jack are comfortable with it." Jack, who had been listening with uncharacteristic patience, suddenly threw his arms around Beckett's neck. "I want to live with the horses," he declared. Emma looked from Beckett to Sarah, seeking reassurance. Sarah nodded encouragingly. "What do you think, Emma? Could you be happy here?" The girl looked around the room, out the window to the pond and the orchard, then back at Beckett, still holding Jack. I think it could be nice," she said cautiously, "as long as we're all together." "That's a promise," Beckett said solemnly. 2 months later, on a clear, cold February morning, Sarah O'Malley became Sarah Xavier in a small ceremony at the Thompson Ranch. Emma served as her attendant, solemn and proud in a new blue dress, while Jack, unable to contain his excitement, bounced between Sarah and Beckett throughout the brief service, causing gentle laughter among the guests. The Peterson house, now the Xavier house, had been transformed in the intervening months. Beckett, with help from the other ranch hands, had repaired the sagging porch, painted the exterior a clean white with green trim, and refinished the floors inside. Sarah had sewn curtains for the windows and pieced together quilts for the beds. Emma had collected wildflowers to press and frame for the parlor walls, while Jack had primarily contributed enthusiasm and occasional help that created more work than it saved. The house became a home filled with laughter and occasional tears, with the smell of baking bread and the sound of Beckett's guitar in the evenings. Sarah found joy in creating a proper family table where they gathered for meals and conversations. Emma blossomed in her new school, bringing home books and ideas that sparked lively discussions. Jack, secure in the love of both mother and new father, grew less clingy and more adventurous, though he still crawled into their bed during thunderstorms. And Beckett proved to be everything Sarah had hoped for and more. Patient with the children's adjustments, firm but kind in setting boundaries, enthusiastic in teaching them about the land and animals. With Sarah, he was tender and passionate, making her feel beautiful and cherished in ways she had never experienced. The horse breeding business prospered under Beckett's careful management. By summer, they had 4 broodmares and a stallion with a promising lineage, with plans to expand further the following year. Thompson, pleased with the partnership, gave Beckett increasing responsibility and a larger share of the profits. One evening in late August, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emma and Jack chasing fireflies in the yard, Beckett took Sarah's hand. "Are you happy?" he asked. Sarah leaned against his shoulder, watching their children now laughing in the twilight. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. "No regrets, about leaving the saloon, about taking a chance on a quiet cowboy, not one," she assured him. "Although I still can't believe you came into that place looking for a wife," Beckett chuckled. "I wasn't looking for a wife, I was looking for a decent game of cards without too much rowdiness." His expression grew more serious. "But then I saw you so clearly out of place, so determined, so dignified even in that environment, and something in me recognized something in you." "What was that?" "Loneliness," he said simply. "The kind that comes from carrying too much alone for too long." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm glad you don't have to carry it alone anymore, nor do you," Sarah reminded him. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the first stars appear in the deepening blue of the sky. "Mama, Beckett, look," Jack called, running toward them with cupped hands. "I caught one." He opened his hands slightly to reveal the gentle glow of a firefly within. "It's like a tiny star," he whispered in awe. "It is," Beckett agreed, lifting the boy onto his lap. "But we should let it go so it can find its family. Everything deserves to be with its family." Jack nodded solemnly and released the firefly, watching as it rose into the darkening sky to join its fellows. "Like us," he said, "we all found each other." "Yes," Sarah said, her heart full to bursting. "Like us." 5 years later, the Xavier Ranch had grown into one of the most respected horse breeding operations in Kansas. The original house had been expanded to accommodate 2 additions to the family: 3-year-old Benjamin, with his father's blue eyes and quiet nature, and 1-year-old Lily, a cheerful baby with copper curls like Emma's. Emma, now 13, had developed her mother's practicality and her father's affinity for horses, becoming an accomplished rider and Beckett's trusted assistant with the younger colts. Jack, 10 and irrepressible, split his time between helping with the horses and exploring every inch of the expanded property, returning home with pockets full of interesting rocks, unusual feathers, and occasionally, much to Sarah's dismay, small snakes or lizards. On a warm September evening, as the family gathered for dinner in the kitchen that had become the heart of their home, Sarah looked around the table at the faces she loved: Beckett, now with threads of silver at his temples but still straight-backed and strong; Emma, on the cusp of young womanhood, serious and thoughtful; Jack, all elbows and energy; Benjamin, carefully mimicking his father's mannerisms; and baby Lily in her high chair, smearing mashed potatoes with artistic enthusiasm. This was the family she had fought for, sacrificed for, nearly lost hope of having. A family built not just of blood but of choice, of love that had survived separation and doubt and fear to emerge stronger, deeper, more resilient. As if sensing her thoughts, Beckett reached across the table and took her hand. "What are you thinking about, love?" Sarah smiled at him, at the man who had seen her at her most desperate and offered not charity but partnership, not judgment but understanding. "I'm thinking about that night at the saloon," she said, "when you told me to rest. How impossible that seemed then, how far away rest felt. And now," he asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners the way she loved. Sarah squeezed his hand and looked at their children, all their children, the ones who had waited for her and the ones who had come after. "Now," she said, "I'm finally home.